So welcome everybody to our last session of 2023. Thank you so much for making these sessions so successful. I was just actually looking through the past few years, and we have been doing these sessions for since March of 2021. So it's been more than 2.5 years. They've been wonderful sessions. We've held them every single month, and we've had some great guest speakers join us. So thank you. You know, our success really is based on your attendance and your participation and the questions that you bring to us. So as long as you keep having questions and keep attending, we'll keep holding these sessions every single month. We, at this time, don't have January sessions scheduled just yet. And that is really because we are holding out until we determine when we're launching the next phase of the online hiring piece, which will include co-ops and graduate assistants. Our target date right now is January 15th for the launch of that, but we are just really getting into the testing phase of that right now. So we're not quite sure if it will be ready, if we're going to encounter any issues, what's going to happen. So that's a little update on that. And we'll just go ahead and get started. So the purpose for today's discussion, we're going to talk about students working during break and what they can do remotely, the New York State minimum wage increase, which is coming, and what you need to do or what you don't need to do in regards to that. The online hire tool, now that we've had it in place, we have actually processed more than 1,000 hires through that tool since we've started using it. So to all of you who have been using it, thank you so much. We learn more about it the more use it gets. We learn where there's issues, where there's things that need to be looked at. So the more you use it, the better it becomes. And honestly, the feedback that we've gotten from it is that it's easy, it's fast. You know, there's a couple hiccups here and there that we'll talk about, but overall, it's gotten some great feedback. So thank you to everybody. And then some reminders for our international students, particularly those who just started working with us this semester in regards to their Social Security numbers. So without further ado, we will go ahead and get moving. We are your SEO representatives. You can contact any one of us at any time with questions or send your general inquiries to studentemployment@rit.edu. And so we'll dive right into the holiday break because that is very quickly approaching. Students may begin working additional hours when they finish their finals. We've gotten a lot of phone calls or questions asking, you know, when can my students start working extra hours? There really isn't a specific date because your students' days that they'll be done with their academic requirements will vary based on their academic needs. So you may have one student who has no finals, has turned in all of their projects, all of their papers are done, and as of today, they're free and clear. They can start working extra hours right away. You have another student who has a final next Monday. That means they can't work extra hours until after that final is complete next Monday. So it really depends on your particular students, your individual students, and what their individual academic requirements are. So it's really a conversation you need to have with your students. Maybe send out a mass email. Hey, everybody, I need to know when the date of your final exam or final paper or final project is due, so I know when you're available to start working extra hours. But it's not a specific date for everybody. It really depends on what their academic deliverables are and when they're due. Our IT closes at 2 p.m. on Friday, 12/22. Student employees are entitled to the same early release pay as faculty and staff for that day if they were scheduled to work that day. So if you have students who have already gone home for the break or who were not scheduled to work that day, that they're not entitled to that pay. But if you have students who are staying here who would have worked from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m., then they're entitled to that early close day, early release pay. RIT does recognize Monday the 23rd through Friday the 29th and Monday, January 1st as holidays. With that said, any hours reported on those days by your student employees are paid at 1.5 times the regular hourly rate. So if you don't want to pay students that extra wage, it's very important that you have the conversation with your student staff now so that they know what the expectations are. Things to remember during the break. It is at your discretion to allow student employees to work on RIT designated holidays. It's not a given, it's not a requirement, it's really at your department's discretion. But you want to make sure you have those discussions prior to the break and prior to them leaving so that they know what those expectations are and they're not inadvertently reporting hours because they didn't know any better. Another thing to keep in mind is that students who are working should have somebody that they can reach out to with questions, time card issues, concerns, things of that nature while they're working. Additionally, if they are reporting hours, somebody really needs to be available to monitor, to add hours to the time card, and to review those hours to make sure they're accurate before the end of the pay period. So if there's nobody in your department who intends to work between Christmas and New Year's because RIT is closed, then it really would be in your best interest to not allow your student employees to work either, because they will have nobody to communicate with, no one to review their time cards, no one to fix punches if there's an issue. They have no contact here on campus. So that's something to keep in mind. If you're not working, it's best not to have your students work because they just won't have anybody to reach out to. Remote work during the break. Per the student employee remote work policy, students may work up to, but no more than 30 calendar days remotely outside of New York State or in New York City. That 30 days begins the day they begin working in that remote location. So if your student goes home today and starts working remotely for you tomorrow on the 14th, then 30 days from tomorrow is the last day that they can work remotely. Then they need to come back to campus. In reality, this 30-day period should cover this full winter break, since classes start, I believe, on the 16th, if I'm not mistaken. January 16th, your students should be back pretty close to within 30 days. So you can allow them to work 30 days remotely. If they're going outside of New York State or in New York City, you don't need to report that to us. You can allow them to work and make sure they understand how to report their hours to you. All remote work must be done within the US. So if you have a student, an international student who's going home for the holiday break outside of the US, they're not going to be allowed to work. All that work has to be done within the US. There's no international work allowed. And just a reminder, students working in their dorms or in their apartments here in Rochester, that's not considered remote work. For the purpose of student employees, remote work is only that done outside of New York State or in New York City. Just a note, I'm sure some of your students may have brought this to your attention at this point, but we have put into place some new 20-hour alerts for students who are exceeding 20 hours in a work week. The reason that this has gone into place is because there's a Department of Education reporting that RIT is now required to do for federal work study. That report brings to light any students who are making what is considered an excessive amount during their time here at RIT. So any student who is far exceeding their federal work study award or who is earning wages that seem excessive, based on 20 hours a week times minimum wage, what that number should be around. And the Department of Education red flags that and then looks into it. Because of this, we have found that some domestic students, because this is not something that we monitored very closely as a university, we're exceeding that 20-hour a week limit across multiple jobs. So whether they were doing it all in one job or they were doing it across multiple jobs, they were exceeding that 20-hour limit. And again, it's because RIT was not tracking domestic students. We were only at the time tracking international students. We are now, because of this Department of Education reporting requirement, alerting students when they're approaching that 20-hour-a-week limit. So they're getting an alert every single week if they're approaching that limit. They get one that says you've approached 20 hours for this week. Please take care to review your hours and not exceed 40 for the pay period. And then they will get the same alert at the end of the pay period if they have exceeded 40 for the pay period. Essentially, it's an alert. It goes to the student and it comes to me. And we review those alerts. If the student seems to be getting these alerts on a fairly regular basis, we will reach out to the student and have a conversation with them as to why do you continually reach this limit? Why are we going over and what can we do to fix that? But essentially, this is to head off any issues that could arise from the Department of Education when they're reviewing those reports. If your students bring this to your attention, have the conversation with them. Hey, okay, if they have multiple jobs across campus, remind them that it is their responsibility to make sure that they're not exceeding 20 hours and that they need to take care of this. They need to make sure they get in line. Now, I am working on suspending these alerts over the winter break because obviously we do allow students to exceed that during the winter break. But getting the alerts in place and then getting them suspended, it can take some time. So if your student has finished all of their academic requirements and you're now allowing them to work extra hours and they continue to get this alert from this point forward, let them know that, hey, we're aware, we're trying to get it suspended. You don't need to pay attention to that. Disregard it until the academic semester begins again. Again, we're hoping to get these suspended for the next few weeks, but it takes time and it's not instantaneous. So we'll see what we can do quickly. Just a note with these alerts, if the Department of Education does see an issue, this can have an impact on RIT as a whole and our federal work study funding. This is why we have to closely monitor this more so than we have done in the past. It's because we don't want to impact the amount of federal work study that RIT gets to be able to provide to our students. So this is basically just to head it off, make sure we don't have any issues, and make sure we're on the straight and narrow. New York State minimum wage is going up. Hopefully you all saw the governor the other morning on the news discuss the New York State minimum wage and how it's going to go up this year and the next couple years. It is official. It's actually increasing on January 1st to $16 an hour. I'm sorry, back that up. It's increasing to $15 an hour for our area, $16 an hour in New York City and some of the downstate areas, but $15 an hour for our area. And then over the next 2 years, it will continue to increase 50 cents more. So we will go to $15 an hour this year, $15.50, and then $16 an hour. And after that, we don't know. At least we do have a heads up for the next 2 years that there is going to be an increase. Whereas this year, they really waited till the last possible minute to let us know. So we know what's happening. What do you need to do? Essentially nothing. Basically, we, SEO and payroll, will collectively ensure that any student who is under that $15 an hour rate is raised up to $15 properly per the new New York State minimum wage. If you want to take any other student higher than $15 an hour, then you are going to have to submit a change form to our office. We are only legally required to take students from whatever rate they are at that is below 15 to 15. We are not going to adjust any other. If you have a student who was making $14.75 because they were a student manager, we're not going to account for that differentiation between what the current minimum and what you were paying for. We're taking everybody to 15. If you want to take them higher, you can do so by sending us a change form. And if you want to send those change forms now, we can process those now, just to make sure that they're in place, ready to go. It makes, everything run a little bit smoother. So our office is a little quieter this week and next week, and we've got the time to be able to process those. So go ahead and send us those change forms. We'll get them in. But if you're just bringing everybody to 15, then there's nothing that you need to do. So moving on to the online hire, and let me just take a quick look at our participants. I just want to see if, I'm sorry, Jen, I don't see the other interpreter. You're okay?
No worries. I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. I just wanted to check real quick. Oops, let's get forward here. Here we go. So moving to the online hire tool, again, I want to say thank you so much to everybody who has gone in there, who has used it, who has sent us questions, who has sent us suggestions. We have a lot in the testing phase right now. Again, we are testing co-ops and we are testing graduate assistants. So we're hoping to roll that out in the new semester. We're testing a feature where you can go in and see where your hires are that you've submitted through the online tool. You can do a search, see whether they're pending, what the situation is, if they've been processed. That way you can easily go in and figure out where you are. If you can't remember if you submitted it, you'll be able to search by name and see, yes, I did, no, I didn't, they're not coming up. So a searchable feature. But that's all in the testing phase right now. And we're working on getting that implemented by spring semester. All of that is from suggestions that you as the supervisors out in the field have made to us. So we appreciate that. We're taking those suggestions and running with them, and hoping that what we're putting into place is meeting your needs. Some do's and don'ts that we've seen over the past couple months since we've gotten this in process. If you are hiring a new student who's never worked for RIT before, do submit the request for the new hire packet immediately after the job offer to initiate the process for the new hire packet. When you submit that university ID and it triggers that new hire packet, the packet goes out the next morning. So if you submit today, your student, they will receive their new hire packet tomorrow and can go in and complete all of those documents and then get an appointment scheduled with us. So the longer you wait to submit that request, the longer your student's start date is delayed. So if you want them to start quickly, get that request in for the new hire packet quickly. But really, the timeline rests on when you trigger that new hire packet. When submitting new hires into the online tool, do use the actual start dates that they are starting to work, not the pay period start dates. The tool has been designed to hire on the student's actual start date. So it will not allow a start date to be entered that is prior to the date that that student completed their I-9. So if that student completes the I-9 today, you would not be able to enter a start date of this past Monday. The system is set up to stop. Actually, what it'll do is it'll send the job to pending, and then our office has to review it and reject a job that is coming in with a start date prior to the I-9 completion. So use the actual start dates. End dates, you can either leave open-ended or use the actual end date. If you don't know what the end date's going to be, leave it open-ended, and then you can go in and submit a change form to us when you're ready to terminate, or use the online termination feature, terminate that way. This is very important because we are heading into this New York State minimum wage increase time frame. If you are submitting a hire for next year, so for next January start date, do enter $15 as the rate if you are planning to hire at the new New York State minimum wage. Now, I know it is going to trigger you to have to complete the advanced level page, but you simply just need to put in the comment hiring in 2024 must use new rate. That way, if you hire with a start date of, say, like January 12th or January 15th, SEO and payroll are scheduling to increase all of the rates up on January 1st. Well, actually December 31st. So anything that comes in with a higher date after that is not going to get caught in our reports to automatically be brought up to the new minimum wage. I hope that makes sense. It's really a timing issue. So we are asking, now, if you were sending us a paper hire form, we actually would take it upon ourselves to manually enter that new rate as we were processing it manually. But since we are asking you to enter through the online hire system, we just need to make sure that you're putting in that new rate. We are trying to catch hires that are coming in for the new year if they're coming in at 1420 and rejecting them and asking you to resubmit with a rate of $15. But there may be some situations where either we just don't see it, or it comes in and it never hits our desk. I say our desk, but it never hits our screen, so we don't have an opportunity to reject it. So if you are hiring for the new year, please submit the hire with a rate of $15 if you intend to hire at the minimum wage. When you are processing the hire, please do add an additional notifier to the hire so both you as the hiring supervisor and that additional notifier as their direct supervisor receive the emails indicating the student has been cleared to work. This feature was put in specifically for our academic departments where our office staff personnel may be processing the actual hires, but the student is reporting to a professor or a lab manager or somebody who is not the person submitting the hire. The reason we put this in place was so that both of you can receive the emails indicating that now the student is ready and cleared to start working. Oftentimes in academic departments, we find that the staff personnel in the office who are submitting hire paperwork and the faculty members are not on the same page when a student is beginning work. There are times when faculty members will have a student start working before the staff member has said, oh, wait, hey, that I-9 is not done yet, or hey, the I-9 was just done today, now they're clear to work. Unbeknownst to them, the student's been working for a week. So we put this in place so that the emails can go to both you and that secondary notifier so you both know when that student is clear to start working. So please use that function. Please share that with your department. Hey, the reason that you're getting these emails is so that you don't let your students start working before you get that email. Please don't let the student start working before that email comes out. When submitting your hires, please look for the 71350 account. Our office hires every single student on 71250 and 71350. Regardless of whether it is a federal grant, whether they are work study students, it doesn't matter. We have to hire every student on both accounts. We only have the ability at this time to pull the 71350 account into the online hire tool. So even if you've been sending us hire paperwork with a 71250 object code on it for the past 10 years, that number's not going to get pulled into the online hire tool, only the 71350. Now, on the back end, behind the scenes, where nobody sees it, Oracle will, well, between Oracle, payroll, and financial aid, they will determine which is the appropriate line to actually pay that student on. So you know you're paying on a federal grant, it can't pay federal work study. The system knows that. The system has rules in place and it will appropriately pay the student. But we are asking that anytime you're processing a hire, you look for the account with 71350. The only exception to that would be is if you're hiring a community service job, which is 71450, because those are separate specific jobs in and of themselves. But for everything else, please look for that 71350. Couple don'ts. Please don't allow a new student employee to begin working until you receive the email from our office indicating that they have completed the I-9. You will get that email. It will say, hey, congratulations, your student has completed the process. You may now go to the online hire tool and submit that hire. Give me just 1 second and okay. Jen, you're all set. You saw. Okay, very good. Apologize for that. Okay, so I do want to throw it out there, a little asterisk, flag on the play. We are currently having an issue with Equifax in which students are not getting that congratulations email saying, congratulations, you've completed your new hire packet. Here are the instructions to schedule an appointment with our office. We are currently working with Equifax to find out where the breakdown is for that. And once we have that back in place, we'll make sure that the students are getting their emails. If you have a student that has come to you and said, hey, I completed my new hire packet, I've completed all of the documents and I never got my email, send them to our email address, studentemployment@rit.edu. We will go in, we will verify that they have completed their entire new hire packet, and we will provide them with instructions on what to do next. We do know that there's an issue right now with that. I just wanted to make sure I put that out there. And we are working to rectify it. So we have a system in place right now to meet the needs until that is fixed. Don't expect a student to populate into Oracle instantly when the I-9 is complete. What that means is if your student comes in today at 2 p.m. and does their I-9 and walks over to your office and says, I just did my I-9, you can hire me now, and you go into the system, they're still going to look like they're a brand new student who's never done an I-9. There is a slight delay, and this is very the same as, when we were on the paper hire process. There is a delay from when they complete the I-9 until they populate into Oracle as a student worker. There's a feed that goes back and forth between RIT and Equifax, and overnight, they will send RIT a list of all of the completed I-9s that they've done in the past 24 hours. Once we get that list back, it updates their record in Oracle and then makes them eligible to be hired. So it's not instant. It doesn't happen within minutes. It actually happens in the overnight feed. So your student completes their I-9 today at 2 p.m. Tomorrow morning, you should get that email that says, hey, your student's ready to be hired. Go ahead to studenthire.rit.edu and submit their hire. Please don't submit a hire form to SEO submit forms if you have already submitted the hire online or vice versa. Please only use one means of submitting your hire. This causes a lot of confusion on our end because we have different people in the office processing in different ways. So one of my staff members might get the paper hire form while the other one is reviewing the online hire tool, not realizing that it is the same exact hire. So please only use one method unless our office has reached out to you and said, hey, we need you to do it differently. Please only use one or the other. This last bullet point, for the very near time being, is kind of a moot point based on what I said a minute ago about Equifax having an issue right now. If a student has received their new hire packet and they've completed all of the documents and not received their invitation to schedule an I-9 appointment for part 2, you can have them contact our office. What we don't want you to do is say, sit down and interview a student today and then say, okay, the next thing you need to do is contact SEO to figure out how to get an SEO card. That is not the next step. The next step is for you to submit their university ID through the online hire tool to trigger that new hire packet. So for the time being, if they've finished the new hire packet, all pieces of it are done, they can contact us to figure out how to schedule an appointment. Otherwise, make sure that the next step after offering a job is you on your end triggering that new hire packet through the online hire tool. International student reminders. As a reminder, all international students must apply for a Social Security number, and they should do that within 2 weeks of their first day of work. If you are hiring an international student and you know this is their first ever job for RIT, please provide them a paper hire form for their Social Security application and direct them to the International Student Services office. So you can still process their hire using the online system, but the Social Security Administration requires a paper hire form to be submitted with their application. So it's just a little bit of a kink in the system. They have to have that hire form. They have to take it with them to the Social Security office. International Student Services manages that Social Security process with them, reviews that paper hire form. So if you have students who you know this is their first semester, first year at RIT, chances are they've never worked for RIT before, go ahead and give them that paper hire form. Or as you're hiring an international student, ask them, hey, have you applied for a Social Security number before? Do you need your hire form to do so? That way they can get ahead of the process and not be behind. I will tell you that students will get an alert at 30, 60, and 90 days, indicating whether or not they've applied for their Social Security number yet. Or I shouldn't say applied, but whether or not they've given their Social Security number to RIT. If after 90 days they have not supplied their Social Security number to RIT, they will be terminated until they do so. So we are right now at that point of a lot of students who started in August and September. If they haven't submitted their Social Security number to RIT by now, we're starting to terminate. They're not going to be allowed to work until they get that taken care of. When a student applies for their Social Security number, they will receive a receipt from the Social Security Administration. They should send us a copy. They should send a copy of that to the SEO email so that we can track that. Now, it seems like the Social Security Administration is doing better now at getting those cards out to students. They're processing a lot faster. There was a time period where processing was looking at 4 or 5, sometimes 6 months before students were receiving their cards. So we want to be able to track that. So if your student sends a copy of that receipt to student employment, we can keep track of that. We can see when they applied for it. And then whether or not they've actually received it, or I should say whether or not they've given that number when they receive it to the registrar's office. But if we can get a copy of that receipt, that keeps our records up to date and it helps us track them better and helps us keep them on the payroll better. When they do receive their Social Security number, they should go directly to the registrar to update their records. SIS will in turn update Oracle, which will update their employment record. So I received quite a few questions ahead of this session this time around. So I'm going to go through some of these questions first and then open it up to the questions that I see coming in through the Q&A chat. So the first question was, how early can we start student employees and co-ops before classes start for spring semester? So the date would be different for those two. Co-ops technically shouldn't start their co-op until the semester begins. The very earliest that we could start a co-op would be the pay period, the start of the pay period in which the first day of classes is. So if I look at my calendar, the first day of classes is January 16th. So that pay period would be, I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank here. I believe Friday the 5th, if I'm not mistaken, and I don't have, oh, I do. Oh, I don't have the 2024 calendar in front of me. So I believe that
the 12th is the majority, the co-op starting.
Okay, thanks, Lily. So January 12th would be the date that a co-op could start. They really can't start any sooner. If you want to hire them as a regular student worker and they qualify for that, you can do that and then change them to a co-op effective on the 12th. So you would submit a hire form for earlier than that, and then a second hire form to hire the co-op on the 12th. You can do that as long as all their registration is all set and whatnot. But technically, co-ops can't start before that pay period start date of the start of classes. Is there a way to see hourly wage in Kronos? Amanda, I'm going to defer to you because you always have the answer to this question and I can never remember.
You can do the math in Kronos. You can see their wages versus the number of hours they've worked, but it won't list their wage directly as far as I'm aware.
Okay, thank you. When you submit a future hire date, for example, a start date of January 15th, when will the student appear in Kronos? January 15th. The student will not appear in Kronos for you until their start date. So if you're hiring with a future start date, you're not going to see that student until that start date. This is why we're hoping to get that search feature up and running in the online hire tool so that when you do hire these future dated hires, you can go back in and look at your online hire tool history and see, oh yeah, that's when I hired that student for. And yes, this has been processed. So I know that student's going to appear on that date. How to extend a student, what form to use. If you have a student employee that you have end dated, let's say the 28th of December, and you want to extend them into spring, you would use a change form. So use the change form, mark extend end date, put the new end date of that job, and send that to SEO submit forms at rit.edu. Now, it's important to note that you can only submit a change form if that job is still currently active. If you let that job end, let's say the job ended 2 weeks ago on the last pay period end date, and now you're saying, oh, shoot, I need to extend this job. Well, now we're going to need a hire form because that job has actually ended. So change form if the job is still currently active to extend the end date, hire form if that end date on record has already passed. How do you give a student a raise? So this would actually be the same form, the student employment change form. You would mark the box that says merit increase or salary increase, I think it says. Put in the effective date of that wage change and send it to our office. Please make sure you also include the account number that you're changing the wage for. It's important to include the account number on any type of change that you're sending to us so that we make sure to change the correct job. Some students have 2, 3, 4 open jobs on record. We want to make sure that we're making the change to the correct job. You also need to make sure if you're giving a student a raise, that raise must be effective on a pay period start date. We can't do a raise, a wage increase mid-pay period. Can the staff receive an email that the student paperwork has been submitted? So this, again, is why we are looking to get that search feature up and running in the online hire tool so that you can see, you can go in, you can search, you can see where each student is in the process based on your submissions. We're going to avoid sending out emails for paperwork submissions or completions because with the volume that we do and some departments, the volume that they do, we don't want to bog down emails. So we're giving you the ability to be able to go in and search. I love this question because I love the proactiveness on this one. Can students work 40 hours during spring break? And when can part-time work for 40 hours begin at the end of spring semester? So yes, your students can work up to 40 hours during spring break. We generally send an email out ahead of time because because of the way that our pay weeks fall, it goes Friday to Thursday. We usually send out an email that says, the first half of spring break, which would be up to Thursday of whatever that date is, the students can work 40 hours. And then from Friday on into the week that they come back to campus, they can work 25. So they actually get the ability to put in a little bit of extra hours there. But yes, your students can work extra hours during spring break. And At the end of spring semester, those rules are exactly the same as they are right now. Your students can start working extra hours as soon as they are complete with all of their academic requirements. So they're done with their spring exams, all of their papers are turned in, all of their projects are completed, and they have no academic deliverables required any longer. So that date will be different for each student based on what they have to deliver at the end of the semester. Okay, so let's get into some of the Q&A. Okay. Great question. Would required online trainings count as remote work? Yes. Anything that the student is doing work related is work. So if you are going to require your student to do online trainings while they are not here at campus over the winter break, that is considered remote work. It has to be paid and it has to be done within the United States. On the last slide, it said holiday break is Monday, 12/23. I think you mean Saturday. You are correct. Yep. The holiday break we close at 2 p.m. on the 22nd. The holiday break begins the 23rd. The holidays themselves that RIT considers holidays would be the 25th through the 29th. So those are the days that a student would be paid time and a half if they report any hours. The 25th through the 29th and on the 1st of January.
Rachel, quick note, I was wrong about Kronos. I have put in the chat the instructions on how to find the student's base wage in Kronos. Thank you to Nikos for sending that over and reminding me.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. This question says, I have students I want to promote to manager in training, changing their pay from $14.70 to $15.50. When should I submit the change? Also, is this done by sending to SEO the change form or done in Oracle? Okay, so any wage changes on your end are done using a change form, and they would come to SEO submit forms at rit.edu. And you can send that to us as soon as you've got those documents ready. We will take those now, as long as you indicate, you want the start date to be on, the pay period start date of the 1st of January. So it would actually be starting December 29th would need to be the start date of that, so that that wage goes into effect before the 1st of the new year. You can go ahead and send us those changes now. We'd love to get them processed now and get them done for you so that they're in place. Okay. So is the SEO aware of their final schedule and academic requirements and will be enforcing hard cutoffs this week and next? Or is that something we need to do on our due diligence on? Hypothetical, what if a student's last schedule of final is next Monday, but they are functionally done today due to taking the exam early, not taking it for any reason? Okay, so it is up to the department to monitor their students and when they are done with their finals. It's not something that we can do for all 4,500 students working on campus. So it is up to the department to know, have the conversation with your students. When are you finished? And the students can start working when they are done. So if your student has, and this happens a lot, technically the final is scheduled for next Monday, but the professor said, hey, it's open now, finish it whenever you want, and that student is done today. Well, they're done. If they're done and they've turned it in, they're done. They can start working now. But it is at the department's discretion. It's up to you to have those discussions with your students and for your students to have their discussions with you. We are not monitoring it. We don't monitor the final schedule. We just give you the guidelines and expect you to have the discussions with your students. I have 2 students I submitted in the hiring app. However, their start date will not be till January 15th. Have I done this too early? Nope, not at all. When should I expect to see them in Kronos? On January 15th. So students will never show up in Kronos until the day that you hire them for. So whatever their hire date is, that's when they will appear. It's never too early to do that. And again, this is why we are trying to get that search feature up and running in the online hire tool. So you can go back and look and see, oh, yep, that's been approved. It's been processed. It's in. Now I just need to wait until that date to see them appear in Kronos. Many students have exams listed in SIS that list a date, time, but faculty have moved their final online and open to be done when it's best for the student to do. Can students begin working extra hours as soon as they turn in the exam? Yes. Yes. As soon as your student is done and has nothing further to do, they can start doing extra hours. Same answer as the last question. This happens all the time. They must be done with all of their academic deliverables. For the pay change, is that through Oracle or by email to SEO? Pay changes have to come through email to SEO submit forms at rit.edu. There is no online feature at this time to submit any pay changes, only hires. Is there any more convenient way to adjust all of our student pay instead of sending in 40 separate forms? All of our students are paid above minimum due to the nature of our work. Unfortunately, no. If you are taking a student higher than the New York State minimum, we have to have a paper trail documentation for that wage increase for each student that goes into their employment file. So an SEO change form is the way to change that wage, and we need a change form for each student. Good point, Nikos. If you are using the online hire tool and creating a template, be mindful that if you have a date listed in there, when you hit save template, it will save that date. So the template feature is great because you could save account number, you can save wage, you can save supervisor, but it also saves date if you fill in that field. You can save a template without a date, and then fill that date in each time you use that template. But if you hit save template after you've already filled in all of the information, including dates, all of that information is saved in your template. So we encourage you to only fill in, the stuff that is never going to change. That would be your account number, generally wage, because you're usually hiring students all, pretty much at the same wage, and supervisor. Is it possible to get updates built in for supervisors so we know when the students get info and complete? If you are talking about the new hire packet, unfortunately, no, because those packets are not sent out by us. They're sent out by Equifax, and we don't send supervisor name to Equifax. We just send the student information. So that we can't add a supervisor, an additional notifier to. The only place that you get notified is when they complete everything. So it's not something that we can do on our end because those documents are sent out by Equifax. Can we let students work starting after they finish their I-9, but before we get the confirmation email? So you can. The confirmation email comes the very next day. So if your student completed the I-9 today and you need them to start working today, you can. But you just need to make sure that tomorrow you get that hire to us, that you get that taken care of, you get it filled out, and you don't get into a situation where you forgot. The student started working today because you let them start working without waiting for that confirmation email and getting that hire in. And now we're, a pay period later and the student's saying, I never got paid or I never got a badge number. So you can, but make sure you've got processes in place to make sure that you're not delayed on getting that hire submitted. We have a student worker who has been on co-op, but is still in our payroll list, even though she is not working here or receiving any pay. For her to start back next semester, is there anything that has to be changed? If the student is still listed on your payroll, then they're still active in your system and they can come back and begin working. There's nothing at this point that you need to do. You can allow them. As long as they're on your list, they're still active. For trainings done at home over break, when we enter those hours, should we enter them as remote work or do we just enter them normally? You just enter the hours normal. You enter the punches. The students should be reporting their exact time to you and you would just enter those punches normal. So there's no bulk hours that you're entering. You're entering the time they started doing that training and they ended that training or remote work. They should be emailing you daily with what hours they reported to work that day. Is there any thought to making the employment eligibility verification that students have to fill out accessible for supervisors to fill out because it can be difficult to track and hear back from students each semester on their eligibility? So the eligibility email that goes to students is really theirs. It's their information. They submit it to us and then they have that on file to show to as many supervisors as they have. Students have multiple supervisors across campus if they have more than one job, and that one email covers all of those. So at this time, it's not accessible for supervisors because students have to submit to receive that eligibility. If you're not hearing back from your students, that's a conversation that needs to be had between you and the students. Hey, you can't start working until you get me that information. You don't get it to me, you don't get hours. It's plain and simple. When a student doesn't get a paycheck, they're going to get that information to you pretty quickly. Are student employees considered mandated reporters? I had a faculty member ask and I wasn't sure. Amanda, I'm going to defer to you because I feel like you are better equipped to answer this than I am.
They technically are employees of the university and therefore they are responsible employees for reporting.
Thank you. What is the difference between an advanced job description and merit increase? So those are two different documents. The merit increase would be submitted on an SEO change form, and that is the actual that is what those are the process that you need us to do. That form is telling us that you want to raise a rate from this to this on such and such an account number on such and such a date. The advanced level job description serves as your justification for any rate that is higher than New York State minimum wage. So that is not telling us what the rate is, when it goes into effect, and what account number it is. That document tells us this is why we are paying this higher rate. So they're two different documents. They're two different functions. Will this session's recording be emailed to registrants? So all sessions are now posted on our YouTube channel. You can go to our YouTube channel and view previous sessions. You can view this session once it goes up. It generally takes usually about 3 days for it to be posted because we have to wait for YouTube to finalize the closed captioning. So I would say usually look for it the Monday after the session and it should be there. But they're all available on our YouTube channel. And Amanda, if you could grab that link and throw it in the chat so I can get through these last few Q&As. We've got 5 minutes left. I want to make sure I get through these. Right now I have students currently working. Can they continue to work with faculty in spring semester? Their work ending is December 22nd. Do I have to extend a higher form? So if you want students to extend into spring semester, you have to send us a change form to extend that end date. And you have to do that before their current end date. Basically, you'll fill out the change form, you'll mark extend end date, put in what the new end date is supposed to be, what the account number is, and send it to SEO submit forms at rit.edu. Will the student receive their new badge number or will you have to issue it to them as we do now? So the badge number is the responsibility of the hiring department. You will retrieve that badge number from Kronos once they appear, provide it to your student, and then show them how to use it. Show them where the time clock is, show them how to punch in and out, and go over your timekeeping expectations. You know, when can they punch in? When can they punch out? Where can they punch in? How soon before their actual shift starts is it acceptable to punch in? Is it 2 minutes, 4 minutes, 6 minutes? But that is all the responsibility of the hiring department. For students who are graduating, do we need to formally terminate them at the end of the term, or will SEO do everything for that? So yes to both. SEO will terminate any student who is on the certified graduation list, but we don't get that list right away. So if you know a student is graduating and you know they're not going to be here come January, get them off your Kronos list. There's no reason to keep them on there. We aren't generally able to get that certified graduated list until midway through spring semester. And by then you're tired of seeing that student on your Kronos list. So you can terminate that student and get them off your Kronos list, or you can wait a couple extra months until we get the list and run the termination report. With the uptick in COVID, can you confirm that New York State COVID pay is still available for student employees? It is. It is. It is still available. And Nikos gave us a copy of, nope, hang on. I didn't send that to everybody. Here we go. User error. There we go. Nikos provided us with this. Students can go ahead into this website and retrieve their own badge number as well. So you can use this, provide this to your students so that they can go and get their own badge number, or you can provide it to them. I do strongly suggest that you have that training with your student though. Don't count on them knowing when it's acceptable to punch in, when it's acceptable to punch out, where it's acceptable to punch in and out, because we have a number of students who've never worked before. This is their very, very first job, and they don't understand employment etiquette. They may not understand that, hey, punching in their dorm room for their job in Global Village is not okay. So you can allow them to retrieve their own badge number, or you can put your processes in place where you issue the badge number and then go through all of the policies and procedures around punching in and punching out and using those badge numbers. Those were amazing questions. It filled up our entire hour. Thank you so much. If you have any questions that we didn't answer or things that are still kind of gnawing at you, shoot us an email. I'm happy to hop on a call. I'm happy to, go back and forth via email, Slack, whatever. Happy to answer questions at any time. You can reach out to Amanda, Lily, Alex, any of us, and we can help you out. With that said, thank you so much for all of your support, all of your participation over the past 2.5 years, 2.5+ years on these sessions. We're looking forward to next year and some new guest panelists, some really great information coming in the new year to help you and support you as you navigate the student employment process and manage your student employees. So everyone take care. Have a wonderful holiday break, a safe and happy new year, and we'll see you in 2024.